And welcome back, Fourth and Long fans. It's your footy correspondent, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with another Donnie's Disposals. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be 100% honest. I am super, super excited for this chat. I have always wanted to chat with an AFL player. We get an AFL retired player, and he happens to be a Swans fan. And you guys all know I am a huge Swans supporter. So I welcome in two-time Premiership player and absolutely awesome for coming on, Mr. Jude Bolton. Jude, thank you for joining me.
Coach Donnie, it's absolute my pleasure, mate. I love being able to talk footy, especially with the international flavour. And you being based in the US, I'd love to talk some footy with you.
All right, let's jump right into it. We'll get to the one of the few questions that is not footy related. And I always like finding out a little bit about the person. I mean, we all love footy. We all love talking footy. So, but I like kind of knowing a little bit about the person behind. So Jude, if you want just a little bit about yourself outside of the game of football.
Yeah, so I retired in 2013 and went into the sort of corporate world post-football. I originally got registered as an AFL player agent, but I was working heavily in the media and I just felt there was a real conflict of interest. So I'd stepped away from the management side of things, but I love the mentoring of players. I've got two young daughters, 10 and 7. We live just in Sydney. So I've been based here ever since my footy career. I played 14 or 15 years with Sydney. So and then I worked for a US software company, actually. So based out of Utah, a company called Domo. We're a modern BI platform. So I've been an enterprise rep with them for about 5 years. I sit on the All Australian Committee for footy. So we get to pick a mark of the year, goal of the year, and the rising star. I commentate for Channel 7, one of the major networks here, and Triple M. I do a little bit with ESPN, and then we've got a radio show in the afternoons from 4 till 6 in Sydney on Triple M as well, so the rush hour. So there's a fair bit on my plate, but I enjoy it.
Awesome. I have to say, I'll have to find that. I listen to the rush hour in Melbourne and in South Australia. So I'll have to find the Sydney one and get to listening to that a little bit more. So I'm going to rack your brain a little bit. I know it's been a while, but can you tell me what is your earliest memory when it comes to football?
Yeah, so I was the youngest of 3 boys. I grew up in a country town in Victoria called Ballarat. My earliest memories are literally just kicking the footy with my brothers. So there's an age difference of 8 and 6 years between my oldest and middle brothers and myself. Sorry. So they were great. They were great athletes. I can categorically remember being just fascinated with footy and kicking with my dad and my brothers and just practicing, both feet and bouncing the footy and stuff like that. So that can be, I think that's probably back when I was about 4 or 5 years old. So, and then it just progressed. Like I remember my oldest brother, he was a great cricketer as well as footballer. And he got offered a position on the list at Hawthorn and he knocked it back. Alan Jeans, one of the famous coaches for Hawthorn, rang him up and said, "How would you like to be our third round draft pick?" And he actually said, "I love cricket," which was, I was just sitting there going, what are we doing here? Like, you've got to be playing footy. So, but luckily it sort of set me on the path and where I wanted to be.
Awesome. So you grew up in Victoria around Ballarat. So I got to ask, I know you're a Swans fan now. Did you support a different club in your younger years?
Yeah, I supported St Kilda. So like back then, there was actually draft zones. So a lot of the area would go to a certain particular club, and St Kilda or Ballarat was St Kilda's draft area. So that's where Tony Lockett, was drafted from, and many great players that went to St Kilda. St Kilda were the first club to come and watch me as a 15 or 16-year-old. I used to go with their recruiter John Beveridge into the rooms and go and actually watch the players train and things like that. But I was drafted at number 8. And St Kilda's first pick was number 12, which they picked Lenny Hayes. So I went to Sydney at pick 8.
Awesome. So when you first got drafted by Sydney, really quick, What were your first thoughts? Were you excited because you were getting drafted, or were you a little disappointed that you didn't get to go to your childhood club?
No, I think I was sort of aware that you have every chance of going to a different club other than the one you support. So I think deep down, I probably had that eye on I just want to play at the elite level. So I guess there was a little bit of trepidation. I'd only been to Sydney once. In fact, my only visit to Sydney was to play an under-18 competition on the SCG. So the fact that it was a couple of years, a year or so later, and that was my getting off the plane and I'm going to live there and play with the Swans was pretty daunting. But I remember they offered me a 3-year deal early on. I only signed for 2 because I thought, oh, what if I want to go back to Victoria? But once I was there, once I got to meet the players and the staff, I literally loved the place. And I was like, you know what, I want to just commit and be a Swans player for as long as I can.
Awesome. That's fantastic to hear. And you see all these times nowadays where you see players go back because they're homesick. That you're kind of the opposite. You found it and you fell in love with it. That's kind of awesome. So I jumped to it. What was your favorite part about playing the sport of football?
For me, it was the competitiveness. I was never that skillful as a player or fast or have those sort of attributes that some of the guys come through with these days. I think, quite often they're almost athletes before before footballers, whereas I was probably really a traditional footballer. I just sort of work pretty hard and things like that, but I always knew that my competitiveness would keep me right in the game and being able to try and take on some of the best players. So I had that sort of will to win, as well as just put the effort in to make myself a better player. And I think it probably held me in good stead to have a long career.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree with you. I've noticed, especially over the last few years, is that there's almost more of this emphasis on getting good athletes, and then you can teach them to be good footballers instead of drafting good footballers and then seeing if you can turn them into athletes. It's quite a different change over these last few years of how kind of teams kind of draft. It's less about the football knowledge. It's more about, can you run a sub something 2.3 3K and different things like that. So it's kind of crazy how the sport has changed. So
Yep.
I jumped to
That's
it.
really interesting. Yeah.
We'll let you humble brag here a little bit. What do you think is your biggest accomplishment as a footballer?
Oh, big humble brag. I guess, just I look at longevity as a real mark for any athlete, and for me, I'm really proud that I was able to play 325 games. So to have that longevity means you've got to recreate yourself over a period. Obviously, the success. I mean, we just celebrated our 10-year reunion of the 2012 Premiership. And a couple of years' time, we'll be celebrating the 2005. So the success during that period and the respect that the club now has. I think I've spoken to some of the older players that have worn the red and white for the Swans, and they said, look, we went through 26 losses in a row, and we've had fans walking out of the stadium and being really disappointed, and now that they're really respected as an entity.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is great. The next question I think is fascinating, because as we were kind of talking off mic, I told you a little bit of how I became a Swans fan, and two of these things are iconic moments in many Swans fans' lore, and that's the Leo Barry mark in 2005 to guarantee the win over the Eagles, and then more recently, as you guys just met a little bit, Malcheski's snap to solidify the win over the Hawks. So, I mean, you were there, you were on the field, you got to celebrate. Which one, in your opinion, is more iconic?
Look, I think for just all time, I think they're both incredible moments in history. I think for me, the 2005 was just such a release of a weight off everyone's shoulders. I mean, 72 years to break that drought and have grandmothers come up and say that they've just got a tattoo because it's been so long. I want to make the memory, and so Leo Barry's mark was just phenomenal. But Malcheski, I will add, there's a I guess, an asterisk for me on the Malcheski moment, because I was a little bit concussed. So I only watched it back after the game and thought, oh, okay, that was an amazing moment. So, yeah, I just sort of didn't tell any of the physios, just walked off and got a little bit of a breather and went back on the field and then finished off the ground. So, but both moments are just phenomenal.
Oh, Jude. Thankfully, none of the physios are going to be watching this. They're going to
It's
be
all right.
kicking
It doesn't
themselves for
matter.
missing. Nah,
It's a yesteryear thing. It's all right, Donnie.
you're good. You're good though. That it was awesome. I remember seeing the Malcheski snap, and I was just like seeing the elation of just the guys around him, and let alone the fan support. And I got to say, that 2012 grand final. I mean, you were in it. What was that like for that atmosphere? Because just even listening to the coverage was the roars from both sides was absolutely insane.
It's deafening, and I think that's why I still feel the energy. Like I can feel myself sort of walking out the concrete cavern, which you come out of the dressing rooms onto the oval, and just the energy of the 100,000 people. It sort of fills your, it fills your chest, and you sort of you go back and you stand on the thing to have a photo, and all the players are almost white as a sheet. They're sort of just stressing about the game and just the roar on that day. And the big thing for me on grand final day is you sort of don't get a sense of how long to go in a game, but you see quite often the orange security guards in their coats going wrap around the oval, and you just go, oh my God, we are in, like, this is all time here. Just this is the moment. So it's just high pressure. Everything's elevated. Those little cameos. I mean, even just got to walk through Mitch Morton's sort of cameo and the role that he played in the grand final. And I think it just shows that you don't have to be the best player on the ground during the day, but you've just got to play your role and actually just commit. And at some stage, you're going to be tested and called upon.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. Mitch Morton with a couple of big goals in that game, I really think helped you guys win that game. So we talked a little bit about teammates, and both the 05 and 2012 had some incredible players. So, and I know sometimes this may be like choosing your favorite child, which no parent ever wants to do, but who would you say was your favorite teammate that you got to play with?
I'm pretty blessed to play with some of the greats, and I think that's what I certainly sort of pinch myself at, being able to spend a lot of time at the club. I actually played with 119 players across my career that played in first grade. So you could probably times that by 3 in terms of people who are on the supplementary list and extended playing list who didn't play or represent the Swans in a senior game. But Adam Goods is probably the one that takes the pick. I think just for his longevity, his quality of play, he played the game in a way that I guess not many others can. He was ruck at times. He would play on a wing. He would play as an on-baller. He'd slide back to centre back, or he could play as centre forward. And just to have that athleticism, his explosiveness from stoppages, where he was going straight out the front, whereas a lot of players you see are trying to deviate and go out the side of a stoppage. He just goes straight through you, and he's looking to kick a goal. So, yeah, I think I had to have Goodsy at the top of the tree.
Awesome. And to go off of that, to see him there at the reunion was absolutely fantastic. I mean, how awesome was it to have him there, to be able to see him again? Because I know, again, unfortunately, he left in a really bad situation. And I think the one thing I got to give the Swans fans is that we've always tried to make sure that Adam feels loved and respected. And especially for me over here, is I was able to see both the docos about everything that he went through. And though I wasn't really as big a Swans fan at that time, it wasn't as easy for me to get a hold of it. It hurt to watch that. It really did. To see what he had to go through was absolutely just heart-wrenching for me.
Yeah, I think it brought up a lot of anger and sadness for me when watching those documentaries. And I think just for the Swans fans who are not only at the game but watching on the TV and things like that, just it was phenomenal to be able to have him there at the reunion, for him in such good spirits. He got interviewed by the ground announcer at the SCG. Like, he was just smiling. He's in a great space. He's got 2 beautiful kids. And I think it just having almost lost him to the game, it's just great to think he's back into the fold in some way at this point.
I sure hope so. I really do, because he's just an incredible ambassador for the game, and especially with his connection to the Indigenous community and everything that he does. We cannot lose him. The AFL, it would be a travesty to lose him from the game for sure. So, all right,
Such an inspiring character, and someone who's transgressed the footy field. I think there's not many players that are able to step into corporate life and political life and things like that. He's a very, very inspiring character.
100% agree with you. So it was great to see him there. So we've went through the time machine a little bit. So now let's go to present a little bit. As you say, you talk a lot of footy, you do media for Channel 7, you do Triple M. So I got to ask, just really quickly, what are your thoughts so far of the first few rounds of the season? Because for me, this has been a season where as soon as you think you've got everything figured out, some curveball happens. And this has been incredible footy to watch.
It has been great footy to watch. I think, there's a lot of criticism on the rules. I think a large number of rules have been beneficial to the game, but then there's been those elements of too many 50-meter penalties and really technical or just like over officious sort of umpiring at different stages. But I love the quality of play. I certainly look and think we are watching the best product per se, but there is a little bit of disenchantment amongst fans around some of the things that are going on in the game at this point. But we've got, obviously Melbourne are by far and away the best team out there at this point, but there's really some good quality sides chasing them down.
Yeah, 100% agree. The scary thing that I've said in the podcast a couple of times, I still don't think Melbourne they haven't hit their stride yet. They're still kind of in second gear a little bit, which is kind of terrifying for the rest of the competition, that they've still got third, fourth, and fifth gears potentially still to come. They've been kind of lackluster. It's almost in cruise control a little bit this year, which has been kind of scary to think about, especially.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right, Donnie. I think they've just this could be one of those seasons that they go through undefeated if they just really. They've got so much depth across all lines of the ground. So and really well coached. I think that belief, once you have been able to taste success, it's suddenly you have an air of confidence about you.
Yeah, 100. And the scary part about it is that they are going through injuries. It's not like they're like the Richmond Tigers of 17, where it was like nobody got hurt. So they were always healthy. They were always had their best 22 out. Salem goes down early in the season. Half their starting six for the grand final team to beat the Doggies out west was not in that first game against the Doggies, and they still win. So it's been kind of almost mystifying to me how Goodwin has just literally made this team so good, so structurally sound. It is almost impossible to beat them. And are we looking at a potential team that goes undefeated? And I even said this is, do you almost, as Melbourne, want to lose one in the regular season just so then you still have that fire in your belly come the finals? Because if you go into the finals undefeated, then you look at maybe a Richmond Tigers 2018. Everybody's telling you you're going to win this whole thing. There's no way you're not. Yeah. And then Mason Cox happens. So I always look at these ones where it's like, do you almost, as a Melbourne fan, want to lose one during the regular season just to keep that fire in your belly? So we'll really have to pay attention.
It'd be interesting. I am a little bit of a believer that you learn more from your losses, and sometimes it sharpens you up a little bit more. We had that in 2012. We dropped a couple of games late in the season. Even though we'd been in really good form throughout the year, and it just really got us focused. It got us just hang on, that attention to detail on all the structural things that just holds you in good stead for the finals.
Yeah. So let's go. We talked a little bit about Melbourne, but I think a lot of people didn't see Melbourne as anything but what they kind of are. So for you, so far through this season, who's your biggest surprise team so far? What team has kind of shocked you? And I wasn't expecting them there.
For me, St Kilda's shown that they've had good enough quality players, but there's been a real elevation of their list, as well as just even the gutsy win they had against Geelong was just phenomenal. I thought once Geelong were 22 points in front on the last weekend, that was just a Steely side that was going to walk all over them, and then they just found a way to just go bang and then take control of the game. So I'm really excited by the way St Kilda are going. Let's see how they we're in that middle part of the season where it becomes a grind. There's some really tough games. You'd have some injuries that take effect, but I think that would be the surprise packet for me.
Yeah, a little bit. Since they didn't make the finals last year, I would definitely agree with that. And then we'll go to the opposite. And I don't think anybody likes talking about this one, but most disappointing team.
I think West Coast. Yeah, West Coast probably for me. I think, and we know that they've had, COVID issues. They've had, a number of different injuries and things like that. But so have Fremantle, and Fremantle have been phenomenal this year. So, probably one of the other big surprise packets. But they were on a trajectory. They've been sort of rising quite nicely, Fremantle. But they've had similar issues with COVID, but have had that, backbone and strength to say we can fight through this, and they've shown that.
Yeah. See, for me, at the start of the year, I don't know if I'm not like Nostradamusing myself, but I kind of called this. I did not like the way they came into this season. I saw too many injuries. The COVID issues were starting to pop up. And I kind of said in our preview, I said, I see West Coast being towards the bottom part of the ladder. Yeah. I think for me, it's Essendon. And I think maybe I kind of jumped on the hype train last year of the Essendon team that got into the finals. Yeah, they lost to the Duggies, but they showed so much promise. They scored so many points. They were an electric team to watch. And this year, it's just been the exact opposite. They can't score. They can't defend. The lackluster efforts, not only at the SCG this last week, but in previous games. So it's like, for me, it's Essendon. Like it's weird to say that.
No, I'd agree, Donnie. I think having watched them up close a couple of times now, just there is that lack of fibre and lack of leadership at times to say, hang on, this is going the wrong way in this game right now, and who's going to make a stand? And that's what I see about good quality sides. Is quite often the leaders just drive the standards. They drive the other players to say, let's raise the bar here. We've got to put our pressure on. We've got to execute well. Treat the footy like gold. We're executing well when we've got the footy, and we are willing to not be downhill skiers. We're going to go the other way and put pressure on. So they have been frustrating. They were insipid against the Swans last week, and that's why I'm mindful not to take too much out of the Swans, victory, even though it was they got the job done, but they've got a real test ahead of them now.
I think I look at it as, I think the only thing confidence, getting a big win, playing as well as they did. I think that's something that, yes, you don't look at the stats, you don't look at all that. I look at it as plain and simply, they're getting some confidence going into a tough game down at the MCG, down in Marvel. My apologies. Marvel this week. So I'm really looking forward to it, because this, I think, it's a litmus test for both these teams, both for Carlton and for Sydney. So we'll make this a perfect jump in. What are your thoughts so far on the Swan season? I mean, it's been a little helter-skelter for a couple of weeks there, but in all, I'm pretty happy with where we are sitting in the ladder and how we're playing.
Yeah, I think we're sitting about where I'd expect this at this point, which is on the cusp of the top four. I think I was always aware that we are the Swans are an improving side with a lot of young players, and you get with that youth or youthfulness, quite often you get the inconsistency. That up one week and then down the next. But I think just speaking to some of the players internally, it sounded like they were training quite heavily through this last period, and just even when you see someone like with a bit more maturity who's had an incredible year, like Callum Mills, he was really off versus the Gold Coast Suns, and like almost a little bit flat. So they needed that freshen up, and I agreed, Donnie, that they did need that confidence booster. I thought Tom Papley was sensational against Essendon, just to get plenty of the footy, kick a couple of goals. He's a real barometer for the side, and he hasn't set the world alight since he's been back from that hamstring injury. So, but the litmus test, as you mentioned, this Friday night against Carlton, that'll really test exactly where they stand. And then they've got Richmond, and then they've got the D's before a break. So, no doubt you'll go, okay, they're a legitimate contender this year, or is it 2023 we're looking at?
Yeah, 100% agree. I think this will be the big one if you can get that win against Carleton. And then I wouldn't be too angry if you can go 2-1 out of these three. Legitimately, as a Swans fan, I don't mind going 2-1 in this. You lost most likely to Melbourne, but I think Sydney's ball movement could be something that could give Melbourne some headaches. But we'll have to kind of see how Sydney's playing, how that Richmond game kind of turns out. So we'll stay on that. I'm one of those. Again, I don't always like picking favorite players, but sometimes it's fun to see who's your guy, who's the guy that you like watching. So, who's your favorite player, or who's the one guy when you're at the ground that you just gotta watch on the Swans?
Oh, well, I think everyone's. I mean, I define Buddy Franklin as your favorite player's favorite player. Like, there's that. There's like, what's he going to do next? Like, but I think he's been like that for so long. Whereas, I do like watching Errol Goulden. I think he's really burst onto the scene. He's so clean and crisp, and his two-way running is just phenomenal. So just watching some of those youngsters come along. Chad Warner, whose birthday it is today, I think he's 21. I think I spoke a little bit before about Adam Goods bursting out the front of the stoppage. I feel Chad Warner's that first type since Goodsy almost, that is just like, I'm straight out the front, and he has got that composure once he's burst out to steady and put a good shot on goal. So Chad Warner, Errol Goulden, I think they're probably two of my favourites in terms of the youngsters. And then the older guard, I've always loved watching Joey Kennedy and Luke Parker go about it, because I played alongside them and I know how hard they work and how they drive the standards as leaders.
Yeah, 100%. And another guy I like watching just because he's so interesting and he's got such a great story is Dane Rampy. I love Dane Rampy. I think he's an incredible player, a guy that just works hard. He may not get a ton of stats. He's not a guy that you normally talk about. And you don't want to talk about him, because if you're talking about him, he's getting disposals, which means the ball's in Sydney's defensive end. So he's just an incredible player to watch. Love watching him. Justin McInerney's another one. I've enjoyed watching that young man grow up. Nick Blakey, I think those two being able to doing that kind of that halfback flanker, using their ability with the footy and to run has been incredible. And I'm loving Isaac Keeney.
Isaac Keeney. I was going to say, you haven't mentioned Isaac. Isaac's form has been phenomenal. I mean, he's really elevated himself as that, dangerous half forward midfielder that, almost in a Dustin Martin type. They're very hard to defend, because if you have got on top of them when they're playing forward, he just runs up, gets high up on the footy, gets up around the stoppages, really clean with his disposals, gets a few touches, gets his confidence back up, and then he'll go kick another goal on you later on. So, I agree with Dane Rampy.
Sits on your head for Mark of the Year. So
yeah, exactly. But the Dane Rampy comments are very true. I think for those watching your show, I think I actually, on my last game, I finished my final game in the preliminary final against Fremantle in 2013, and on the bus back to the hotel, I tapped Dane Rampy on the shoulder and said, "Would you like to have my jumper?" So you want to. He was sitting in the number 42 or 43, I think, back in there, and I knew he'd. I always want to. Have someone who's you want to watch and enjoy watching play with the jumper. And I mean, it's unlike other sports. Like you didn't have this number for the whole time. So I just wanted to make sure it was in good hands, and it's been in great hands. He's an All-Australian. He's been a captain of the club. So terrific player.
Great choice. So I want to do this really quickly because I have you on there. Were you at the ground when Buddy kicked his 1,000th?
Would you believe, Donnie? Okay, so I was in isolation because my wife had COVID. But I will say that I was down for a sponsors trip that we had to take them to for Triple M. So I wouldn't have been there anyway. I had to go up, and I was going to take them to the football up at the Gold Coast versus Melbourne, as well as a big sponsors trip as well. So I remember when they asked me to do the sponsors trip, I was like, Buddy could kick his 1,000th here. I'm going to miss this moment. And then I said, but at least we're going to go jet skiing. We're going to breweries. We're going to the footy. It's going to be a great trip. And then my wife got COVID. So we were in isolation, and I just had to sit there and watch. So I can't be one of the, now I reckon there's probably 300,000 people who said that they were at the Buddies 1000, and over the years it'll be even more than that. But I wasn't one of the people, but I got to see all the scenes, and it's just an amazing moment.
I'll tell you this. I've told a few people this, is that I was working at the time, and I was working at home, and I had the iPad on, was watching it, and I literally was like, I don't care if I get in trouble with my bosses, I am gonna watch this. And it took everything in my power. It's like 6:30 in the morning. I live in a condo complex, so I've got enough neighbors close enough. I can't yell, I can't scream, I can't run around going. So I'm literally sitting when it goes through, going, just pumping my fist in my office chair, just going nuts. And I have several friends who I was tweeting back and forth with. We're all like, "Buddy's kicked his 1,000th," and just going absolutely nuts. But I can't say anything because it's 6:30 in the morning. My wife's asleep in the house. I don't want to wake her up. I don't want to wake up any of my neighbors. So if it makes you feel any better, being 13,000 kilometers away, I was just as excited as everybody that was on the ground. And thankfully I had a few mates that were actually there. I got videos, all sorts of pictures and videos in my Facebook and all that sent me like, "Donnie, you got to see this." And they're like, I get videos of people running on the ground. I've got people that are taking pictures on the ground. So it was just an incredible moment. And I got to say, it was, yes, the whole fan thing was a little scary at times, but I loved how Buddy handled it. I think the fans were respectful. Nobody got hurt, thankfully. Just an incredible moment, and it's great to see it. And I don't know, I don't think I'm stretching too far to go, this might be the last time we see a 1,000th goal kicker, unless it really reverts back to those old days of the Plugger Lockets where guys are kicking 10 and 12 goals a game.
Yeah, it's like I think we all hope that there is going to be those 100-goal seasons and things like that, but literally it's, so you've got to have such consistency over so long. It is so rare, and I actually wish he was as clinical as he is now in front of goal in his early days, because he would have got the mark a long time ago. He kicked so many points as a young man for Hawthorn. When he kicked the 100-goal season, I think he had 80-odd points or 90 points that year as well. So he's kicking the ball beautifully this year, and as he has the last couple of years. And it's just a phenomenal moment. I love all the stories around it. There was people setting out a picnic rug to just have a glass of wine and some cheese. I spoke to the people that
spread their name's ashes.
Spread their name's ashes.
I saw that.
The fact that Chad Warner and Ollie Florent were outside the ground.
Yep, I saw that too. I heard somebody also said there was an engagement. There was a proposal on the ground as well. So it just, I love the stories. It's absolutely fantastic, and being able to see it live was absolutely awesome. So I'm going to do one last question before we move on a little bit. And it's more of the recency bias, and the Victorian media is absolutely losing their mind over this. And that's the rumors that Dustin Martin wants to move up to Sydney. Yeah. I say this, as much as I would love Dusty to come, I'm not sure if it would be the greatest fit, because I'm loving all these youngsters in the midfield that I just don't want to lose the future to bring in a guy that, in my personal opinion, maybe 3 more seasons before I think he decides to hang up the boots.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think it has perpetuated this conversation around Dusty, and I think first and foremost, it's just great to see him back playing football. I think I thought we might have lost him to the game. He's achieved so much. He's a big game player. So it's just been great to see him run back out for Richmond and perform again. And he's got his groove back. Like he kicked a couple on the weekend, had 20 disposals. So, I think they're a real danger or a threat over this next period, Richmond, because of the way he's playing. Whether he ends up at Sydney, I mean, Sydney used to be that club that people would go for the final couple of years. And I agree that there is a real nucleus of youngsters that you'd hate to keep them out of the side with another player. But if you did bring someone of his ilk in, I mean, it'd only be beneficial. I can remember the outcry from Melbourne media saying, "Oh, Buddy won't see out his contract. What a disgraceful move," and all that sort of stuff. He's been the best thing for the Sydney Swans, and even the carry on that people were saying, "Oh, he's going to ruin the Bloods culture. And it's like, how is a two-time premiership player of his standard going to ruin a culture? And how strong is the culture if one player is going to disintegrate it in 2 minutes? So he's enhanced the culture. He's been a phenomenal ambassador, Buddy. And I think, whether that eventuates, we'll wait and see. But Dustin would just be a similar player.
Yeah, and I've heard that a lot. I don't know. Has it ever been discussed this talk of there's a no dickhead policy at the Swans?
There's been that discussion over the journey, and it did stem from back in Paul Rouge's days. I mean, it was around when you're drafting players or bringing them into the organisation. If you're looking at two players and their skill levels of comparable nature, it's like, well, who's that better person? Who's going to be buying into the fabric and actually live and breathe our behaviours? And I think that's all it stemmed from. So, I think there is also an asterisk on that. It's no dickheads policy, but if you can play, we'll have a think about it. So, but no, I think I'm always really proud of the players that are wearing the red and white. They're really approachable. They're very humble. So hopefully that's something that continues, because I know that the players really take pride in that culture.
Yeah. And I think in some situations, the culture kind of comes into you, and it's almost a pride thing. Like, I think Buddy's accepted and come in and like his ability to share the footy, like almost in essence, I agree with what somebody said. It was almost like he was looking for Papley. He was looking for Heaney. He was looking for Wicks. He was looking for Bell. Like, it was almost like he was going out of his way to facilitate almost more than have his shot. I mean, there were a couple of 50-meter shots he probably could have took, but he finds Papley center corridor 30 out. So it's like, you love seeing that. Like, it's almost like the Bloods culture for some of these players. It comes in and it kind of turns them into players that match the culture more than the culture being affected by a player coming in. So I've absolutely love that. That's fantastic. And for me, that's something that comes down, like I said, you were under Paul Rouge, you were under Horst Longmire. I got to ask, how is Horst in the locker room? Is he the fire and brimstone type of guy that sometimes he's kind of portrayed, or is he a little bit more like the tear in the eye against GWS up on the Gold Coast when they found a way to beat GWS after Callum Mills and Harry Cunningham had to go out with COVID a couple of years ago?
Yeah, it's interesting. Horst he's got an incredible demeanor. Like in the coaching box, he is fire and brimstone. Like he coaches on edge. He's anxious about everything. He's trying to make sure that, he's on top of every aspect of it. But he's got this incredible ability to step out of the coaching box. And by the time he's down on the ground to address the players at quarter time, half time, three-quarter time, he's almost absorbed all that tension and he's just been able to process it and then deliver this calm sort of speech. He's still got the 11 out of 10 spray, and, he can rip someone a new one at different stages. But I think it falls on deaf ears if that's your only go-to as a coach. And he's a wonderful communicator. He's been able to build rapport really well with the players, and the young players just love him. They look up to him. He's a great coach. He's been, a stalwart of the Swans, and he's taken to multiple grand finals. Obviously, only drank from the well just the once in 2012, but he's taken them there a long way, and you can see the regeneration of this list under his tenure.
Yeah, it's been fantastic watching him coach. It's fantastic. So we're going to go from the men's team to the women's team. I'm on this podcast. I do women's round reviews. I love watching the AFLW. I think it's a fantastic product. I think it doesn't get the publicity I think it deserves. I think many of these women are hell of footy players and absolutely love watching the game. So have you been keeping an eye on the AFLW? And if so, what were your thoughts on this last season?
Yeah, so I didn't keep right across it, because I've got to sort of focus a little bit on AFL men's in that sense. But I've loved the standard of AFLW and where it's headed. I think all sports are guided by their stars, and when you've got someone like, say, Erin Phillips, who's now transferred to the rival club, she's gone to back home and gone to Port Adelaide. But such a star of the competition. That is what drives people to the game. They want to see, and kids identify with those stars. So I think the quality and standard of footy has just improved out of sight over this last couple of years. Early on, and probably back to our original discussion around athletes, and then we'll teach them to be footballers. We've got this wave of young kids being drafted into the AFLW now who only know AFL, and that's what it is. This is a generational thing. You're gonna see the skill level just continue to be better and better. Hopefully that it has a big impact on scoring. That's one area that you do want to come back and say, look, this was a great high scoring game, but they play it the right way. They're tough, they're hard. And it's good to see the Swans get a side. I know there was a lot of criticism of Sydney not having an AFLW side when the competition started. However, the logistics and the realization of the fact that there is only a couple of female toilets in the SCG sort of current facility, but they now moved to a new facility at the Royal Hall of Industries, which is just next to the SCG. Incredible facility that'll be built. It'll house AFL women's side, AFL men's, as well as the Go Foundation, which is Goods O'Loughlin Foundation. So exciting times for the Swans to have a real, I guess, flagpole and flag in the ground in Sydney.
Awesome. And you kind of brought up my next question is that with the Swans women's team coming in, how excited are you to be able to have that Swans women's team and being the father of a couple of daughters? Is there a little part of you that hopes maybe your daughters will potentially put on the red and white?
You know what? Like, I'm just glad there's a pathway. And the thing is that there hasn't been that pathway previously for girls growing up. Now, like the fact that the academies flow in, they've got great quality coaching throughout all the junior ranks. It's just exciting that it's there. If they chose to do so, they'll have to put the effort in. I know to be good at anything, and that's what I try and teach my daughters, is just you've got to put your effort and focus on something. But they love their gymnastics, they love their swimming and dancing and things like that. But they have played a little bit of footy. I think they'll have another go at school as well. But they've played a couple of years of footy and they enjoy it. They just love getting to the SCG. I had a recent one at the North Melbourne game where I wasn't commentating, and I thought I'll take the family, and we went downstairs and the girls got to meet everyone and got to meet the players and things like that. So they were pretty excited. I think they're red and white for life, definitely.
Awesome. That would be fantastic. I know Brett Kirk's got a few daughters themselves, and I know they're big into footy.
They're great. They're going really well. They're good quality players that have come through the academy ranks and got that drive that Kirky and his partner Haley, his wife Haley, is just an incredible lady as well.
Awesome. I'm hoping one day we'll see a Kirk donning the red and white for the women's Swans. So I want to ask this as a retired player, as a player that's played at the ultimate level, the top level. What's one piece of advice that you would give to a young man or a young woman who wants to become an AFL or an AFLW player in the future?
For me, it's like there's two aspects of the game now. You've got to be able to kick the football. You can't come in and so that practice of your craft of kicking, of handling the ball, you can't fumble. So constantly having that ball in the hands, just working on different types of kicks, making sure that when you've worked with the footy, you're not double handling the ball. So I think too many times, I think there's a lot of distractions in young athletes' lives. There's so much going on that they don't actually put the time and effort into their craft. The other thing is just get your running ability up. I think the game commands those athletes that can cover the ground, get to a stoppage in the back pocket, and then the next thing you're putting pressure on and then mopping it up and kicking a goal on the half forward line. So you've got to be able to cover the ground. So it's working on the athleticism and fitness. But that ball handling for me. So, I'm testament myself, like never give up on your dream. I think I was told by coaches that I wasn't skillful enough. I was told that by coaches I wasn't quick enough, but I always just said, you know what, I'm just going to put the effort in, work right in and make them eat their words.
Definitely. And the other thing you can do is just show those two premiership medals, and that's that's the perfect little
Always a
response
bit of
to
fun.
them on that. So alrighty, I'm as an American, I don't have the connection to footy as much. I haven't been over to Australia to see a pro game. It is on the
Got to
docket.
get you out. We've got
I'm
to get
going
you
to.
out.
But the one thing is I've done a few series where I've chatted with a lot of Australians, and I ask these questions because I want to get a good gauge for when I do get over there what to expect. So I'm going to ask this: when you go as a fan, not as an announcer, not as a media member, what is your go-to food when you go to the footy?
I still love a pie and sauce. I think just you just got to get a big meat pie, layer it full of layer a heap of sauce across it, um, and then some hot chips. I think that. There's just the simple go-to that you're not going to miss.
Awesome, awesome. And I've told a few people on this podcast is last year for the grand final, I made Aussie meat pies here at home to have one for the grand final. I thought if I'm gonna go
Perfect.
Aussie, I thought if I'm gonna watch the grand final, I'm gonna go full on. I'm gonna get a meat pie, and I made them myself. And I have to be I'm not gonna not a big humble bragger, but I thought they turned out pretty well. So it
Big
was
effort. Great
fantastic to be
effort.
able to have the meat pie, watch the grand final. That was absolutely fantastic. So I'm trying to gather for me where the best place to sit is. So when you go to a game and just there to watch, where's your prime spot to sit and watch the footy?
If you can get like I still prefer sort of on the wing side of things, but a little bit elevated if you can.
Mhm.
Unless, of course, a Buddy 1000 moment, you need to be down near so you can actually run on the ground. A lot of people had to sit down and walk down from the higher
Do-do-do-do.
spots, and then it wasn't that elation. But honestly, like I think having been a commentator for a long period now, it is that sort of coaching box commentator
Mhm.
area where you get to scan both forward and back line, you get to see the transfer of play, you get to see the action on the other side. Whereas if you're right on the fence, you do hear the hits and you see
Mhm.
the effort and but I always liken it to when I'm doing boundary commentary or the sideline commentary, it's like looking across a nightclub and saying who's talking to who over on the other side. You're sort of like it's hard to gauge exactly what's
Mhm.
happening at that real ground level, but also people need to see what the players are seeing at that level as well. So I think if you get to one game, try and go elevated on the wing, and then if you just want to just get amongst it, get down low near the boundary fence at either end, and you get to see the combativeness of the game, but also how quick their decision making is in traffic. It's
Mhm.
phenomenal.
Yeah, I've already been offered by a couple of people. The cheer squad has already offered me a place and all that. So the one thing is I'm cultivating many a contact for sure, and it's been fantastic. The one thing I got to say is all the Swan supporters that I talk with, and even supporters of other teams, because I've been. The best part about this podcast is you meet people from all over the country: Perth, South Australia, Queensland, Victoria, New South Wales, Northern Territories, Tasmania, even. It's fun to just talk because you love hearing their stories. You love kind of finding out their connection to footy, why they love their club, whether it's a family thing, whether it's being the black sheep and deciding to jump. Like one
Yeah.
person, my Port Adelaide person that I talked with this last year, his entire family is Adelaide supporters. So he just decided to be the black sheep and go for Port Adelaide. So
I think it's so funny. I just want to stir up my family. There is a lot of those stories.
oh, it is absolutely great. So I've thoroughly cherished it. But my last question that I love asking, and this is just for me, one of those that, especially for you, you've played in so many games, you've watched so many games. So I'm interested to see what is your favorite game of footy all time, whether you watched, whether you played, or whether you commented on. Favorite game of footy you've ever seen?
Oh, look, I'd actually go back to the olden days, and it was a game at the MCG. I remember my dad was a Geelong supporter, so he dragged us along to the MCG, and it's a game that bobs up on, some of the greatest games of all time. And it was at one end, uh, Gary Ablett kicked 14 goals, Gary
Mm,
Ablett Senior, and Paul Salmon kicked 10 goals for Essendon. And some of the moments in that game, it is just a throwback to yesteryear of the big key forwards dominating. So I look back at that as just being one of the most iconic games. And they show it always on TV as just, let's go back to this famous game. It just inspired me as that, this is why it's a great game of footy. Like it just, electric, sort of very attacking, but hard-nosed footy. So I loved it.
Yeah, I know there's one that I absolutely loved, and maybe it's because I listened to Triple M in Melbourne a lot, is they recalled the 89 grand final. And the most hilarious part about it is Billy Brownless plays in the game, and he was also part of the commentary team. So just the sledging that he took in from BT, from Duck, from JB was absolutely fantastic. I laughed so hard every time I listened to it. It's one of those, I have to watch it at least once a year. The 89 grand final, an incredible
one of the great games. One of the great games.
Chief, having Chief there, having Gary Ablett Sr. there, just so many just legends on both of those rosters there playing in that game. And the fact that Dermy gets knocked down, has to go to full forward because he breaks his rib.
There was the story is that a number of those players had to go off to hospital at the end of the game, the Hawks. But there's even footage of Robert Dipper at Domenico with three Geelong players in a headlock, and it's just like just unbelievable. And then the fact that Ablett kicks 9 goals and they don't get it done, it's just sort of staggers you. If someone kicks 9 goals in any team now, you're sort of like, they've surely won the footy.
Yep, definitely, for sure. Well, Jude, this has been an absolutely fantastic chat. It's been great to sit here and talk with you again. This is the first time I've had an AFLW. I've actually had an AFL women's. I interviewed North Melbourne's Daisy Bateman. Wrong. North Melbourne, not Melbourne. Sorry. I would have loved to talk to Daisy Pierce. Unfortunately, I don't think I have that much clout yet. But it's incredible to be able to sit here and talk with you again. I love being able to share my passion for it and to hear your passion for a sport that you got to play for so many years, which was a fantastic. I know that I try to watch the 2012 grand final at least once a year, just because it is such an iconic game for me, because the back and forth nature, the way it went. So to be able to talk to somebody that got to play on the MCG that day, this is an honor, sir. Truly an honor.
No, Donnie, it's been a pleasure to chat to you. It's love seeing your passion and all the Swans paraphernalia in the background. I love seeing that. So, wish you all the best, and hopefully the Swans can continue on their trajectory as well.
I so hope so too. This weekend will be this Friday night will be an incredible one. Early morning for me, that 4:55 a.m. start is going to be fantastic. So we'll have to see it. Good old arm wrestle.
Yeah, it kicks off the Sir Doug Nicholls round. So it's wonderful, the Indigenous round, all the different jerseys. I can see you've got the Indigenous jersey on the back, over the back there on the couch there. So
finally got the Black Swan one. It took me forever to get one, and I have to thank a fellow Swan supporter who lives in New South Wales sent me that, and I wasn't even expecting it. Did not expect it, and all of a sudden she's like, "Can I get your address for something?" I'm like, "Okay," and like I said, it's one day I package Australia. Okay, wasn't expecting this, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me, because that's the one I always wanted. And then conveniently this year they get a new one, and I'm like, great, now I got to get another Indigenous jersey. But I don't mind. I got the Indigenous footy last year. I thought that I needed to get an Indigenous footy for that, so I absolutely can't wait. So but this will be a fun Sir Douglas Nicholls round. So Jude, thank you again so much for hopping on. Fourth and Long fans, this has been another episode in Donnie's Disposals. We will be back very soon with our round 10 review, and hopefully maybe I'd love to have you on a podcast with a round review if you'd ever like to, Jude.
Yeah, I'd love to at some stage, mate. Absolutely. So
all right. Yeah, well, we will keep in contact, and maybe we'll see if we can get that arranged. So I will let you enjoy the rest of your day. This has been another episode of Donnie's Disposals, and we will be back very soon.